Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Tourism Data Space event on the topic of data governance for tourism governance, marking the launch of the Gaia-X white paper on data governance for tourism governance. Just by way of background, this webinar is part of a webinar series that the Gaia-X AISBL organizes together with our ecosystems on different domains. And if you want to find out more from, of course, tourism is also a cross-domain ecosystem, please check out our website there. I'm going to just do a couple of bit of opening and housekeeping bits, and then we will move on with the agenda. So what we have in store today is a welcome and introduction from our CEO, Ulrich Ahle. And then we will hear from the European Commission. We'll have two different speakers, one from Rehana from DG Connect, who will give us a bit more of a higher level overview of the European strategy for data. And then we'll zoom in on tourism and sustainability with Andreea from DG Move. Then we'll hear from Victor Gorga about the white paper that marks the launch of this event. And then we'll look specifically at the role of Gaia-X trust framework in this in data governance within tourism. And then our final session will be a roundtable discussion with three different speakers coming from three different perspectives within the tourism ecosystem, where we'll have a deep dive into the topic of data governance in tourism. We'll also leave time for questions during the event, but also at the end, and then we'll have our closing remarks. And then just so that everyone is aware, the webinar will be recorded. This will also allow us to share the recording with you afterwards, and it'll be available on our Gaia-X YouTube channel. And I would highly encourage you to also participate in the webinar. You can use the Q&A function, which is in the bottom of your screen. You can also ask questions orally using the raising your hand. It's in the React button at the bottom. So if you also want to ask a question live, that's also possible. But during the different presentations, please do write your questions in the Q&A function, and we'll get to them during the webinar, and we'll also address them at the end. So with that, I will hand over the floor to you, Ulrich, for our opening.
Victor, thank you very much, and a very warm welcome and a good morning, assuming that most of you are in our time zone, also from my side. Yeah, as Victor showed, Gaia-X is supporting and enabling the creation of interoperable data spaces in several domains. In total, we are supporting 16 domains, where tourism is one of them. And one of the pioneers in this endeavor to create interoperable data spaces based on a federated cloud infrastructure. Yeah, it's important not to forget that these data spaces need an underlying cloud infrastructure. That's why we created last year a claim stating data does not flow on rainbows. Yeah, so this is always important to state, but it is also important to state that we need to agree on a joint architecture to create data spaces, on building blocks to fill this data spaces, this architecture. And this is the main reason why Gaia-X has decided to join one single publicly funded project, and that is the Data Spaces Support Center, which got the mandate from the European Commission to define the overall architecture for interoperable data spaces, to fill this architecture with software building blocks to make it easier to create data spaces and to create also the basis for this, what we call automated compliance, to be able to automatically identify participants and to automatically authorize participants in a data space without any manual interaction. And this architecture has also the target to enable interoperability between different data spaces. Imagine there is a smart city data space, let's say in the city of Madrid, and in addition, a smart mobility data space, a smart energy data space, and a tourism data space. And the 4 data spaces would not be able to communicate with each other, to exchange data, to transfer information, then we would make a big mistake. And this is one of the roles of the Data Spaces Support Center of Gaia-X, but also of our partners with whom we are working together with IDSA, BDVA, 5Air, and so on, in which we are working. Looking at the maturity level of the implementation of data spaces, we have clearly a pioneer, which is coming from another domain, from another ecosystem in the automotive area, Catena-X. They started some years ago already, are in production, have the target by end of this year to have 1,000 companies on this data space along the supply chain of creating a car, exchanging data via a data space, and what's becoming visible here. And I think this is also true for the tourism domain, not only to have big organizations as participant of a data space, but also SME. So small and medium-sized organizations. This is quite still a challenge to motivate the smaller organizations which don't have large IT departments to first identify the benefits of data spaces, of sharing data in a trustful manner, and then also to enabling them to join these data spaces. And that's one of our tasks, to make it as easy as possible also for small and medium-sized organizations to join such data spaces, and with this such ecosystems. And I'm not, by far not a tourism expert. I'm a tourist sometimes during vacation, but I'm not in the tourism business. But for sure, I think the majority of the companies and organizations in the tourism domain are small and medium-sized organizations, talking about hotels, talking about transportation providers, and so on. So this is a target which is shared by different ecosystems, bringing SMEs into their ecosystems. And then there is sometimes a discussion, is it important to also have the end user directly engaged into the data space, or do we have some intermediaries there using the data space and then providing information and access to the end users, to the tourists in your case? Here, a clear position from our side. Data spaces are there also for end users. Yeah, look at the health data space, for example, where we are handling patient data, and these are personal data. And the ambition is clearly that patients are directly interacting with a health data space. And this would also be my position, my vision for a tourist data space, that we are able to engage, to connect also to the tourist herself, himself. This means really to connect millions with millions. And this is why we started the endeavor of data spaces, not staying in the domain what we did for the last 20 years to create digital platforms with quite an effort to connect providers and data users of data, but to be able to connect millions to millions. And this requires standardization, this requires trust. And that's what Gaia-X is providing to the creation of interoperable data spaces, the trust framework, and clearly with the ambition to also interact with the end users. Would you give me one more minute, Victor? I'm 2 minutes over, but maybe some of you might know that besides my role as Gaia-X CEO, I'm also in a voluntarily work in my little village, which is in the meantime, the most digital village in Germany. We have implemented a digital platform based on 5R technology. That is what I did before I joined Gaia-X. And we are now on the way to migrate this to become a data space. And also here, interaction of citizens is planned, that the citizens are directly interacting with the smart city data space in this case. So with this should have been a few welcome words from my side, and trying to bring our position also to the challenges which are there, to the tasks which are there, but also to the potentials we have together in the domain of data spaces and here for the tourism data space. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ulrich, and good. Thank you for highlighting already some of the challenges, which I think will pop up also later through the webinar. Interoperability between data spaces, onboarding SMEs. I saw Rehana already shaking her head there, so there's already some alignment there happening, so that's great to see. So with much further ado, we'll move to the European Commission portion of the agenda, and we'll begin with Rehana, who's Deputy Director for Data and Head of Interactive Technologies, Digital for Culture and Education in DG Connect. And I'm also aware, Rehana, that you need to, you won't be able to stay for the whole webinar. So I encourage anyone in the audience, if you have questions for Rehana, please pop them in the chat while she's speaking so we can address them after her intervention. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Victor, and thank you very much for inviting me. So I have some slides to share, and I'll try to share them right away. Voila. Can you see them? I know there might be some black boxes, but then all right. So good morning to everyone, and a warm welcome to this webinar from sunny Luxembourg. I hope wherever you are, it's as sunny and summery as it is here. So I will start by zooming out a bit and really recalling the policy context of this data space, which is at the crossroads of several important European policies in relation to tourism that my colleague Andreea is going to speak about, and in relation to data. So I will really bring the data dimension here in my words, and I will just take a minute to really remind everybody that the current policy framework is the European Strategy for Data, which was adopted in 2020, which aims really at creating the single market for data, where data flows unhindered across sectors, within a sector, across sectors, so that it can be shared and reused as widely as possible. So here what we are really looking at is how do we create value from data which is not shared. And when we look at the when we quantify it, it's massive data that for the moment is simply locked up and not reused as much as it can be. And to be able to do this, we have a number of instruments that we bring in, be it in terms of legislation, be it in terms of data spaces, which is what we're going to talk about in strategic sectors, and in terms of the funding that we can bring in through the Digital Europe program, and also some other complementary funding instruments that really help us to give a boost and to go towards this open and competitive EU data economy. Now, as some of you know, so we are, since the 1st of December, we have a new college with new priorities. So in what we call the previous mandate, so from 20 to 24, what did we do, in relation to legislation and to deployment? So we had a number of rules that came up. We had the review of the Open Data Directive. We had the Data Governance Act, which really put a framework in relation to how you create this trust in data sharing. We had the Data Act, which was the last kid on the block in relation to how do we actually allocate value of data by really fair, fair allocation of data along the whole value chain. And in terms of deployment, we had a massive, substantial investment in research through Horizon Europe, and through the Digital Euro program to really try to establish and then scale up these data spaces that Ulrich mentioned just before. Now, we are now, as I just mentioned, we are since December, we have a new college which has new political priorities. And one of them is about a data union. It is, so the commissioner under which I work is the Executive Vice President Hanna Virkkunen. And in her mission letter is the data union. So why data union, and what is the data union going to look at in terms of challenges? So what we see here in these last years, and you have been experiencing it, is that we see that a lot of companies, especially innovators, including the Gen AI companies, and we have all witnessed, this massive breakthrough that came in Gen AI, they are really running out of data. So we need to go and tap into all potential sources of robust data. What we also see is that there are increasing geopolitical tensions, and every day brings its lot. So we see that in terms of international data flows, we have an uncertainty. So we need to make sure that we have data flows unhindered, at least in the EU, and with like-minded partners. What we have seen, because we have a lot of conversation with the different stakeholders, especially my colleagues who are implementing the different legislation related to data, which is that we need to harmonize. We do have a number of overlaps, especially in terms of data governance body, and we need to streamline a bit. And as you may know or not know, there is a very firm commitment by the European Commission to simplify and to decrease the regulatory burden. So this is something that we are strongly committed to, and we are reviewing all our legislation, including the data legislation, to see where we can simplify and where we can really cut the overlaps and really make it more easy to implement. And obviously also, how can we invest and how can we bring automatic compliance tools and really cut the red tape as much as we can. And because as we are speaking about data spaces, what we see is that we are in a way a bit hitting a wall in relation to the scaling up of data spaces. Data sharing is not happening as it should because of a number of reasons. Ulrich mentioned the fact that it is difficult for some segments like the SMEs to tap into sources of data, or even for them to share data because of bureaucratic procedures. So how do we really make sure that we can scale up and look at the different dimensions for doing this? Now, speaking about the data spaces and really making sure that we can scale them up, as we say in French, raison d'être. So the very the very purpose of a data space is obviously to make this data sharing happen. And Ulrich mentioned the importance of having infrastructure, reliable, I would say even robust infrastructure, and the whole architecture for interoperability, which is really the basis for this data sharing to happen. But you can have infrastructure as robust as can be, but you also need to have the skills. This is absolutely crucial, to have enough people who know how to make data sharing happen, to know how to use those tools. And one of the priorities of my unit is to support advanced digital skills. And what we are seeing is that a lot of people struggle. They do not have neither a talented enough a pool of specialists, able to do so. And also a lot of them are really, a lot of SMEs are struggling because they face a competition when they try to hire specialists, a competition from bigger companies. Interoperability obviously is an important part that has already been mentioned by Ulrich. And of course, we need governance. This is the topic of this webinar. And how can we make sure that governance, we have in place governance models that are really adapted to the need of the data spaces. And this brings me, obviously, in a few words, why governance is key, why it is at the heart. Because here, what we're looking at is for clear rules, for participation. We are looking at clear rules for a structure to have access and use of data in a fair, transparent, proportionate, non-discriminate manners. We are looking here at procedures and all kinds of licenses that allow data holders to have control over the data, because this is something which is absolutely needed to create the trust for them to be able to engage in a data space so that they can then reuse. And this is, of course, based on the values which are essential, such as protection, privacy, respect of competition law, which is really at the heart of this endeavor. And I had not connected with Ulrich, so what I'm going to say is what he has said, but it is just, you know, in a way, it really underlines once again, you know, the important parameters in this conversation, which is that given the sheer heterogeneity of different data spaces, and especially when we speak about the tourism sector, in a way, it differs from other domains because it's very heterogeneous and it is very transversal in nature. It has a large variety of stakeholders with a very high proportion of SMEs and even micro enterprises. So it has to be inclusive so that it can allow different types of stakeholders, partners to have a voice and to feel their interests represented. Secondly, trust. It has been mentioned, if there is no trust and if there is no perception of trust, there won't be partners who engage in it. Of course, to have partners, we need incentives for them to be able to share the data, but we also need trust. And this is a key enabler for all the data spaces. I am responsible for 4 data spaces, and at the heart of all these 4 data spaces, you have trust. So this is a very important, parameter, not only in terms of governance, but also in terms of the tools that we are going to deploy that have trust embedded in the way they can cater to the different needs. And the last point, which I will leave you with, which is, I had mentioned it, which is capacity building. We can have the right governance, we must have inclusivity, we must have trust, but we also must make sure that really this is accompanied by capacity building. We will not be able to scale up data spaces if we don't provide the participants, the different stakeholders with the right skills and the right tools to be able to share and reuse data. So this will be an important part, an important dimension in your conversations. And I would really also encourage to give this feedback back to us, that how can we better support and help you in terms of capacity building. And this was my last slide. And thank you for listening to me. And I wish you a very, very interesting and fruitful webinar. And back to you, Victor. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Rehana. I'll leave a brief moment to see if there's any questions for you. Otherwise, people can pop them also in the chat, and I believe you can also, or in the Q&A function, you can also respond there written if there is anything. So then I'll give the floor to Andreea, who's the head of tourism sector in DG Move, and I believe you'll be giving us a little bit more of a tourism-specific and sustainability-focused presentation. So over to you, Andreea, please.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for the invitation today. It's such an exciting topic to speak about. I have to say, I mean, we've seen how effective data management by destination management organizations, by actors in the tourism ecosystem can strengthen the tourism offer. And so it's one of of the reasons that we wanted so much to make available a data space for tourism ecosystem. I mean, indeed, Ulrich has said it. It is a very fragmented ecosystem. It's 3.2 million enterprises, and about 99% are SMEs. So it's a big challenge. Also very diverse. I mean, if we look, from mobility companies to tour operators to hospitality, hotels, restaurants, cafes, have so many very different types of actors. And one must not forget also the destination management organizations as well, because we have seen know how important it is to have access to the right data in order to ensure a balanced tourism across destinations. We have seen just this Sunday protests in certain hotspots, and we know this is an issue, the absolute participation of the local community and its well-being. So it is absolutely important, essential to empower destination management organizations to support better management of tourist flows. So in that respect, we believe the tourist data space will have a very important role to play. And then there is the question of incentivizing participation. Again, this is something where we have so many stakeholders who need to participate, but also be trained in order to be able to provide this data and to use the data. But before, maybe I just give you a couple of introductory remarks about the tourist data space. Some of you may be aware of the different milestones. So it all began, of course, with the communication from the Commission that we adopted back in July 23. We also had a blueprint for the tourism data space, and some of the principles that were mentioned earlier regarding transparency and openness and security of data. They are also, of course, I can see they're quite in line between the white paper that you have recently presented and the blueprint. Also, we had an industry-driven code of conduct for data sharing back in 23. So these are like background that we prepared for a data space. Now, of course, there's the question of the infrastructure there under the Digital Europe program. This is the project has started, so infrastructure is one thing, and then the other thing which is equally important is preparing the destinations and also the companies to be able to use this data. So we also have a few projects in that respect, working with destinations, helping them, teaching them how to make use of this data. Now, one thing that I wanted to mention, of course, we have now a Commissioner for Tourism. We have a new Commission mandate, and we are also working already in the direction of a new EU strategy for tourism. And in that respect, certainly data space will be one project that will be extremely important in the framework of the data space, the strategy. However, we wanted to take this a little bit further because we need to hear more from our stakeholders about how we could do, hear about the barriers they have, but also, about the new innovation trends, about also uses of artificial intelligence when it comes to the data space, and also about the scalability of innovative solutions. So there are a few new elements on the table that we'd like to consult our stakeholders on. And maybe I share with you, I take the opportunity to share with you just a link to our presentation. Just a second. So here you have the link to our targeted consultation that will run until the 15th of August. We are consulting on several themes, but perhaps of more interesting for this specific topic, we also have one topic, of course, on digitalization, digital transformation, but also on smart tourism. So here we want to hear from you. Of course, you are very welcome to answer to all the questions, but we really like to hear about scalability, about innovation trends that you see, and again about possible barriers. So I think we'll be able to share this with you after the webinar in order to have your input. Then perhaps just 2 points I would like to mention before we go into debate. One is that we have already conducted a test case because, of course, there is the issue of interoperability, we know very well, and then there is the issue of governance. These are like big building blocks that we have to put together when it comes to the tourism data space. And in that respect, we have conducted a test case already. And we have also been working with the member states in order to possibly set up an edict. So this is something that we may continue pick up now with the strategy. We hope to involve the member states, in particular those who already have a data space. We can learn a lot from them, from how they have attracted companies in order to take part and share their data, how they have taught them to use it, and so on. So these are steps. We go step by step in this endeavor, and several building blocks will come together also with the strategy, in particular when it comes to the use of AI, because we see very much not now that the tourism offer is a lot shaped with AI and also with the generative AI. So we have to integrate these trends and give our small and medium enterprises the opportunity to use this to their advantage. I stop here and happy to hear from you further.
Thanks a lot, Andreea. I think you already touched or saw a little bit into the future for the webinar. It's great you mentioned the heterogeneous network in tourism, and also mentioned the important role of destinations. So this is why also we'll have DMO represented in the panel later. And it was also interesting to hear all the different actions that the Commission is bringing forth to ensure interoperability and effective data governance. Just while I reflect for one moment longer in case there are any questions from the audience for you, Andreea, I also liked what Rehana mentioned earlier about inclusivity and introducing this principle, because when we're dealing with decentralized structures of sharing data among many, many different participants and not in a centralized manner, we indeed need this inclusivity to think of all those that are impacted and involve them in decision making. So if there's no more questions, then thanks a lot, Andreea, for joining us, and I hope you can stay with us for as long as you can, and you can also respond to other things that come up in the ongoing discussions. So with that,
I will stay for a bit. So
yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Andreea. So with that, we'll move on to the overview of the white paper. And I'm going to hand over to Victor Gorga, a managing partner in tourism and territorial development at Inmark. And Victor was actually one of the authors of the white paper, which was a collaboration between the Gaia-X tourism ecosystem and many different contributors from there, and also the Gaia-X AISBL. And Victor will take us through the content of the paper and what are the different challenges that ways to look forward in the paper on the topic of data governance. So over to you. I believe you're still on mute, just in case you're not aware.
Mute. Yeah. Compartir. No? What I've done with the paper? Oh,
No, this is your email. Yeah.
no, I realize that. Let's see. I'm not so familiar with Zoom. What I did before and it was perfect. Give me just a second. Here it is. Okay. No, it's okay. Okay, excellent.
Victor, you just need to switch the view. So we're at the presenter mode at the moment. In the configuration of visualization, I think in the top bar.
In the configure. Okay.
And then no, the first one.
The first one. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. I've been asked to provide the overview of the white paper produced by the Gaia-X tourism ecosystem on data governance. Personally, I always been involved in tourist development. And for years, I've been convinced of the value of having, sharing, and analyzing data, but not everybody believes it. This is not just a technical document, it's a strategic vision for transforming the way we plan, we manage, and we evaluate tourism in Europe. The central idea is that data is not an accessory to governance. It's becoming the very foundation of how we ensure sustainability, inclusion, and competitiveness. So I will guide you through the main challenges, the proposed framework, and the opportunity that creates. Okay. As some of the others panelists already mentioned, European tourism already is facing a critical moment in which data has become very important for planning, decision-making, and sectorial innovation. This document explores how effective data can be to strengthen tourism in Europe. Let's begin by the context. First is that the European tourism is one of the most fragmented sectors. It's made, as they already said, for about 3.2 million businesses. Over 90% are small and medium enterprises. And they are very highly diverse because these are companies that provide different types of services with different challenges and characteristics, although they are sharing a common market orientation. Secondly, destinations are very widely in capacity, in digital maturity, in market maturity, and in data use. Meanwhile, technology is advancing rapidly, but the sector is not evolving at the same pace. Data remains very often siloed, underused, or concentrated in the hands of very few big players. And as a result, policies and business strategies are often reactive and not proactive. The lack of shared data spaces and determines collaboration, strategic planning, transparency. So this is not just a technical limitation, it's a governance failure. Data governance is fundamental pillar for effective tourism management, integrating sustainability, equity, and resilience into sectoral strategies. But what do we intend by data governance? Data governance is the set of rules, standard processes, and technologies that they ensure that data is reliable, ethically managed, secure, and available to those who need it. What is going to provide data governance will enable mass market marketing, improve crisis management. We already had the the experience some years ago, better resource allocation, more relevant public policies, also strengthens sustainability by allowing us to monitor and evaluate the environmental and social impact of tourism activities. The analysis of real-time data provides a comprehensive view of the visitor experience, all the throughout the tourist journey, enhancing the quality and the competitiveness of the European tourism. And critically, it builds up trust between the different type of actors, public, privates, and also communities, cities alike. So it's both a technical system and a cultural shift. What are despite the potential, there are major barriers. And in the white paper, we identify 5 critical challenges. First, data fragmentation. There is a dispersed ecosystem of public and private actors, diverse in size, involvement, and needs integrating both major players, and small entities. They all generate data, but they are not interconnected. Second, lack of interoperability. Systems don't speak the same language, so data integration is sometimes very difficult. But however, existing data silos were not designed to be part of networks. This overcoming limitation is at the core of the concept of data spaces. Third, many stakeholders are reluctant to share data, especially in regard to trust and security, data sovereignty, users control, and associated costs. They fear losing control of compromising competitiveness. They are skeptical about the tangible benefits and return on investment that means participating in data spaces, or what data spaces may offer. Fourth, there are no harmonized standards or definitions across countries or platforms. The absence of standardized data formats and protocols amongst the European Union member states represent a significant obstacle to the creation of a cohesive data space. And fifth, a regulatory landscape, which is very complex. We already spoke about the General Data Protection Regulation, the Artificial Intelligence Act, the Data Governance Act, and the Data Act, creating legal uncertainty, especially for small players. But there are also structural barriers to overcome. On top of these systemic challenges, there are structural limitations. Many small destinations and small and medium enterprises simply don't have the resources, either financial, either capacity or human resources to invest in digital infrastructure. Digital literacy is low. The costs of joining a data space, so I mean, adapting system, training staff, ensuring compliance, sometimes can be prohibitive. As a result, the sector risks creating a new form of inequality, what we could call digital inequality. Some actors move forward while others are left behind. And this goes against the European goal of cohesion and inclusion. So capacity building, as was already said by another panelist, public support must be part of the solution. we see key opportunities, but if we address those barriers, the benefits will be significant. Real-time data allows us to monitor visitor flows, prevent overcrowding. It can help personalize visitor experiences while protecting privacy. Impact indicators on jobs, emissions, energy use, cultural participation, can inform decision-making processes. We can shift from a reactive management, which is what is being done nowadays, to predictive models. Destinations can be more resilient to shocks like pandemics or climate events that are becoming more and more usual. And tourism can support broader sustainability goals. So the European data space for tourists under development for the moment aims to unlock these opportunities at local, national, and European level. But this depends, achieving this vision depends on collaboration among different actors. First, governments must set the rules, fund the infrastructure, ensure coherence across the different sectors. In this case, overregulation can generate significant barriers, while the absence of a robust frameworks close the legal gaps that put sovereignty at risk. The lack of coordination also between levels of government, which is also quite regular, often results in conflicts and overlapping of competencies. Secondly, generally responsible for managing tourism information and coordination of the various stakeholders, DMOs connect local data sources, and they are supposed to turn them into knowledge. Third, private actors must be willing to share operational data in a responsible way. A limited participation of the private sector in the destination management weakness collaboration to address the collective challenges like sustainability, over-tourism, and competitiveness. And finally, the civil society and research institutions play a key role in promoting ethics, standards, participation, and inclusion. No single actor can build this alone, so it must be a shared responsibility, and that's why governance matters as much as technology. Oh, sorry, I've gone too far. Well, what is the role of Gaia-X? Effective data governance requires a regulated and ethical framework. The concentration of data in the hands of large technological platforms poses risk to sovereignty and equity of the tourism ecosystem. This is where Gaia-X comes in. Data governance requires control not just over data itself, but over the infrastructure where it's stored, processed, and exchanged. Gaia-X is an European initiative that seeks to create a common federated framework for sharing data, one that protects privacy, ensures sovereignty, and encourages interoperability. It's not a centralized platform, but a decentralized model based on trust and compliance. We are proposing a structural transformation of Europe tourist governance model, placing data at the center of the decision-making, policy designs, public action, publication. Everything aligned with Europe's cultural, social, and ethical values, respecting territorial diversity, privacy, and common goods. Gaia-X facilitates cross-sectoral data sharing under secure, interoperable, and sovereign conditions. For tourism, this means that we can have ecosystems that they are open but secure, collaborative but sovereign, connected but respectful of local specificities. Gaia-X enables European destinations and companies to participate in the digital transformation without being dependent on non-European technological infrastructures. This governance ecosystem establishes an equivalent playing field for all participants. Gaia-X provides the technical and the legal tools to make it possible. Its trust framework includes 4 labels that certify whether services compliant with data protection, cybersecurity, and sovereignty requirements. There are different levels from basic compliance to full European control, and certification processes are automated and transparent. This ensures that all actors in the data space model follow the same rules, and the users can trust the systems they use. So it's a scalable model that balances innovation with control. However, governance is not just about technology, not just about regulations or infrastructure. It's about people. No governance model can succeed without empowering people, and this is very important in our vision. We need to build digital analytical capacity at all levels. That means training programs for small, medium enterprises, support for local governance, co-creation spaces where solutions can be tested and improved. Participation in this case is critical. To spread this is very important. And when people understand how data is used and how the benefits they can get from it, the trust will increase. And trust is the foundation of a good governance model. Well, just as final takeaways, let me close with some ideas. First, data is no longer optional in tourist governance. It's essential. Tourism actors and destinations must transition from fragmented data users to active data-driven decision makers. Second, governance must be ethical, inclusive, and future-oriented. Third, Europe has a great opportunity to lead the way by aligning technology with democratic values, transparency, equity, privacy, sustainability. The Gaia-X white paper gives us the blueprint, but it's now to us to implement through partnerships, investments, and commitment. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope this overview helps clarify the importance of building and share data with a governance model for tourism. Hope you read the documents, and let's work together to build a more resilient, fair, and intelligent tourist ecosystem. And at the end of the full presentation, we will welcome your questions, feedback, or reflections. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Victor. I shared the full white paper in the chat, and it's a 30-page document, so impressive to be able to distill down all the key messages in your presentation there in 15 minutes. So thanks a lot for that. We'll be touching upon some of those challenges and opportunities, looking at actual implementations within tourism in the roundtable. But first, we're going to zoom in on the topic of Gaia-X and the role that it brings to data governance. So Alberto Palomo, CSO for Gaia-X AISBL, will be joining us to give that presentation. I think Victor gave you a nice introduction already, highlighting some of the benefits will be, but you're going to do now a deep dive into that. So Alberto, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Victor. Yes, you're absolutely right. The other Victor sort of presented the sort of the segue, the right segue for that. Do you want me to share the presentation, or will you be sharing it yourself?
No, please share your own screen. Thank you.
So just give me a second, because I'm not as used to Zoom as I'm with other. Okay. Okay, hopefully this is the right thing. There we go. Yeah, so am I sharing the right thing?
It's not full screen yet.
Oh, no, I don't have it in full screen.
Okay.
I wasn't planning on precisely to avoid any.
We can see the screen though, yeah.
So maybe you do have a point. That works, right?
It's still on the first view.
Okay, let me share. That's it now? Is that full screen?
We still have the first view, so
right. Just give me a second then. I'm struggling with this.
I think if you do it now, it was because you had it editing. You hadn't accepted the editing yet, perhaps.
I'm just going to open it as a PDF because that's one that I'm more comfortable with. Okay, here we go. That should be better now, right?
Yeah.
There we go. So yeah, Victor Gorga sort of mentioned the role of, or sketched the idea of what Gaia-X does in the context of data governance for tourism. But I want to deep dive a little bit more. I won't be getting into the very technical aspects, but I definitely will be getting into some of the architectural aspects of what Gaia-X really is and it's not, right? So kind of taking on what Victor was mentioning, when dealing with data, there's different challenges that are already identified in the white paper, right? And these are fairly common, really, to pretty much every domain. But data fragmentation is a real challenge, how to actually use data that is stored in different IT silos. And in that sense, the getting interoperability between different platforms and different data sources is an open challenge. And this really speaks about unified standards, right? Not only from the technical perspective of the standard, as in the platform standard, but also like the actual semantics of the actual data itself, the data fields, the data sources. But moreover, it's well understood the resistance of the stakeholders for sharing data for reasons that have to do with sort of competence or data sovereignty purposes, where you might think, well, these are my trade secrets, my company secrets, but also for reasons of compliance, privacy, GDPR, reputational risk, if there is a sort of a leak of data. But often we don't really talk about the cost and the return of investment. This is actually quite relevant. It's the understanding of, what am I to win in engaging in all these enhanced risks and the need for talent and investments, capital and OPEX investments, what can I get out of this? So what I want to show is how Gaia-X really helps with some of these aspects. We don't aim to solve all the aspects of data governance, but definitely some that are quite critical. So the reason what Gaia-X really is, and I think Victor mentioned that very well, it's not a platform, it's actually a standard. Think about it as the standard, or as an analogy, you can think of the standard that makes 5G, 3G, 4G. You don't really use the 3G when you pick up your phone, but it's definitely underneath. You don't need to be an expert. It's completely hidden or abstracted by the telecom companies for the GSMA, who then produce the equipments for networking in telecommunications. And then on top of that, there's cell phone manufacturers and companies like Telefonica or T-Systems or KPN, in Europe, that provide the actual service using the devices that at the same time use the standard underneath, the G3 or now 5G, 6G. So this is a little bit similar, the idea of the Gaia-X standard is to really be underneath the different services that are being shared, and that in shape will in turn shape how the data governance happens, right? But it's not direct, that's what makes it a little bit complicated. So what is the Gaia-X standard? Well, we've basically split it across 3 pillars. The one thing missing in this diagram, which is available on our website, is really a horizontal arrow connecting, going all the way from technical compatibility to endorsed project and to a detailed ecosystem with clear and measurable governance rules. It's a little bit hard to read. I should probably put the link to the actual website where you can find this. But long story short is, Gaia-X standard does prescribe some technical aspects, right? And this has got to do with the architecture, with a data exchange document, which doesn't really speak about the data being exchanged, but the process of exchanging data, the identity, credential, and access management document that talks about how to do identity and credentials and managing access to things. In this case, it's not just data, it's to services. Services do include data services. And very prominently, the Gaia-X ontology. The Gaia-X ontology is basically an entity relationship model that allows you to describe how things behave in a Gaia-X universe. And then we're working on a technical compatibility kit, which basically will allow to test any given software or any given technical artifact against this technical compatibility of Gaia-X. And also a reference software toolkit, which all it means is a catalog of things that have passed the technical compatibility kit. If you have, in the analogy that I used before, if you have a cell tower, equipment that is compatible with 5G, this will be equivalent to saying you have a piece of software that is compatible with these technical aspects of Gaia-X. What this means is that what that would allow you is to basically understand the process of how the information is described in a Gaia-X universe. So not necessarily, what you will be using your software on top of, but how your software behaves and how it describes itself, right? And this is relevant in the sense of compliance. It's some sort of common language really to describe yourself. Think about it in natural language, right? We all come from different countries here, but we have a common language, which is English. Using English is different than the content of what we're saying. So the technical compatibility of Gaia-X is the common language, but it doesn't really say what to use it with, right? That part is in the Gaia-X compliance, which is a different element, but of course, it's predicated on technical compatibility. So in the analogy, you use English, and then you describe what you're using English. What you speak about certain things in English, right? So what is Gaia-X compliance? Well, we have a compliance document that talks about the labels, and labels sort of a standard compliance all the way to level 3, which describes how certain cloud and data elements will behave, whether you have GDPR applicable to it, whether you have sustainability aspects in a data center, whether you need to have cybersecurity, and there's increasing level of requirements, right? From the basic ones, which is literally saying, hey, if I'm going to use a data service, somebody needs to be the owner, and the owner of the data service needs to be identified. This is pretty basic for everybody. All the way to saying, look, I need to abide by GDPR. Well, GDPR is a European law, so if you're exchanging data in Japan, you don't need to abide by GDPR. Thus, that's not in the basic level, that's in the more advanced level. And the technical elements that we provide with that, I'm sure you've heard it before, is the detail clearinghouse. The Gaia-X detail clearinghouse is a technical artifact that will take services describing the Gaia-X technical compatible way and will actually assess whether those services are compliant and to what label, right? That's the key. And so that doesn't speak about technical interoperability or language semantic interoperability, but about legal and organizational interoperability. In other words, now I'm comparing apples to apples, right? I'm speaking English, but then I'm also assessing what you're actually saying with English. And the third element, which is not part of the Gaia-X Trust Framework, it's more about the application of the Gaia-X Trust Framework, is the endorsement program. Or in other words, when you have an endorsed project, a lighthouse project, you probably have heard of them. So we have a qualified project, which basically means it's a project in progress that is starting to think about Gaia-X. A lighthouse project, which is, hey, they've committed to using Gaia-X technical compatibility to really adhere to the different label levels as much as they need for their own business purpose, but it's still in progress. And then a lighthouse data space, which is really more of a lighthouse ecosystem, because sometimes we have things that are not data spaces per se. Like for example, a federation of clouds. That's not a data space, so to speak, but it's still a federated ecosystem. And it's lighthouse in the sense that it uses Gaia-X and it's in operation. And so the idea of this endorsement program is that it will do an assessment based on different criteria, right? And that criteria, not surprisingly, and that's why I wanted a horizontal arrow, it's based on technical compatibility and in compliance elements, right? You do need to have technical compatibility in order to have compliance, and you need both of them to be an endorsed project. And what this actually enables is a detailed ecosystem, or in this case, a data space, since we're dealing with data governance, with very clear and measurable governance rules. What gives you the ability to measure is the technical compatibility. I speak the same lingua franca that allows me to measure. And then I have a clear governance rule, which are the labels, and then I can actually compare different services to be able to say, yes, they are the same, they're not the same. You need to measure and you need to compare. And how do we apply that? Well, to try to explain how it solves some of the standing challenges in data governance that Victor was mentioning is, well, technical compatibility really allows you with data fragmentation. It's all about federating things, distributed resources. When you're technically compatible, you can identify data sources and participants and owners and users of those data sources. As a matter of fact, we're now working in a catalog of catalogs. And what this does, the technical aspects underpinning it, is really the technical compatibility. When you have a technical compatible kit, it allows you to actually say, yes, this catalog of an ecosystem or of a data space speaks my same language. Thus, I can list it in a catalog of catalogs. So if you look at it, what it really does is saying, look, you might have a data space that it's a given catalog, but I can actually have a catalog that lists the different data space catalogs. And what that allows you is to solve data fragmentation, right? And you have a distributed or a federated ecosystem. Then compliance, which is the second element, does help with data sovereignty, and the compliance does, right? Basically, what our compliance labeling scheme does is really just provide transparency. We as Gaia-X, we are not in the business of certifying things, although we do work with conformity assessment bodies, some of them you're very well known, who might say, yes, this organization offering this service is certified against this ISO, is certified against this American or Japanese or Korean standard. They generate the trust, but we generate the transparency. In other words, when you do have a common description of what things mean, everybody becomes transparent. Now, the reality is, you might find that the service being offered that you wanted does not fulfill what you needed. Okay, that's fine, but it's still being transparent. You can just look for someone somewhere else to find it. And then the third element, which is the Gaia-X endorsement, really helps with interoperability between different platforms and data sources. And this is why I tagged it as ecosystem, right? Gaia-X endorsement and endorsed projects are about practical implementations of these concepts. That's why you need to first have federation, then have trust, then actually have a practical implementation. And the Gaia-X endorsement does provide a way to have a unified de facto standard. The key aspect here is it's de facto. It's not a real standard as in sort of prescribed by ISO or by the National Institute of Standards. It's a way for the ecosystem to really come to a unified way of doing data management, right? And obviously that's going to very heavily depend on the industry, on the stakeholders. So Gaia-X does not get into that. What we instead offer is a trust framework, geographic and domain extension. We are building an extension model so that people can build extensions. So we give you the kind of the rules of the extensions, but then the actual extensions will model the right conditions for a given ecosystem. That's the key aspect, right? And of course, it's predicated on having technical compatibility and on using compliance. But we extend the compliance, or the domains extend the compliance to say, look, in my field, interoperability between platforms in tourism means this. I will then model what those interoperability features or variables mean in terms of these trust framework domain extensions. And that's how we really help with data governance, because we provide you a way to connect, you know, at the governance level, not at the technical level. We provide you a transparency that leads to trust, and we provide you with a method so that you can extend it and apply it to your own conditions in your own ecosystem. And here's as a final slide, kind of a more practical viewpoint of what I just explained. You have pre-existing data and infrastructure services all over Europe. You know, this is just a diagram, obviously. These data sources, these applications, these graphs and these applications. Let's say, hypothetically, you have a user in the south of Sweden, right? All of these elements here, they will have characteristics and terms of conditions. And technical compatibility is completely agnostic to rules. It says you need to describe the characteristics and the terms of conditions of these services or these data sets in a given way. That's the lingua franca. That's the common, that's the English, so to speak. And then the user will say, look, I need a specific rules. So the clearinghouse would have picked up everything that speaks this technical compatibility language, and then will be able to match the desired rules or labels of a user with what actually each of these services provide. And it will give you a thumbs up, as in, yes, this thing in Ireland does fulfill the rules set by the user, and this thing in Normandy in France does not fulfill it, right? So Gaia-X compliance, they're the actual rules, but they're completely agnostic to technology, right? And then at the end of the day, when you put those two things together, you end up with a clear mapping of what the different services a user might want to use. And it's able to do that because it has a transparency of compliance. Everybody is being judged on the same rules, and it has a technical aspect of how to actually use the clearinghouse to read what each of these terms and conditions, characteristics of these different services are. So in a nutshell, it really is a foundation to build a trusted, decentralized or federated data ecosystem. And that's how we try to solve some of these data fragmentation problems, the lack of interoperability between platforms, or the lack of unified standards in managing data. Of course, we're not the only ones. You do need to have technical backbone as well. We don't do the technical backbone. We just do the compliance part. But once you have that compliance part in common, it's relatively easy to then find, to make sure that the different tools and technical artifacts out in the market really adhere to these, because we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. You know, you can use your existing systems. They just need to speak a language of Gaia-X technical compatibility. So that's all for today.
Thanks a lot, Alberto, for that overview of how Gaia-X enables trust in digital ecosystems and data spaces. And now that we've heard about that and we've heard about the policy context for data governance in tourism and some of the challenges and opportunities are there, we're now going to move to a more discussion mode. So we'll have 3 different speakers who are bringing 3 different perspectives from the tourism ecosystem. We'll have Dolores Ordonez, Director General of AnySolution, which is the coordinator of Deploy Tour, so the deployment project of the European tourism data space. We'll also have Jonathan Huffstutler joining us from Eona-X, CMO at Eona-X, which is actually one of the lighthouse projects that Alberto mentioned earlier, and an operational data space. And Polona Černič, Business Intelligence and Research Analyst from Ljubljana Tourism, which is one of those key actors, a DMO that was mentioned earlier, and also a competence center, which we'll dig into a little bit more later. So I want to first kind of reflect on some of the challenges that were mentioned from the panelists earlier, and see how that fits with, let's say, the experience of the different initiatives that you're driving. So Dolores, as you're representing the European tourism data space, we'll begin with you with the most wider view. So I'm wondering, there was different challenges mentioned, from fragmentation of actors to interoperability needed in data. And what I'm wondering is, how does the European tourism data space, the Deploy Tour, envisage or is already planning to address those challenges?
Thank you so much, Victor, and thank you so much to the speakers, because we have had a very interesting overview on the perspective of the European Commission, but then also thank you to Victor for this summary, and I like it very much also the presentation from Alberto. I think in all of them they mentioned this part of fragmentation, even with Ulrich when he made the introduction, and this is very important. So you know that the Deploy Tour doesn't depart from scratch. So we had a previous project, a CSA, it was called DATES, and there together with the other project, this DSFT, we generate a blueprint. In this blueprint, we started analyzing which were these challenges of the tourism ecosystem, and this fragmentation was stated in all the documents that we produce. So I think this is quite a characteristic from the tourism ecosystem. So one thing is the complexity. So we are a lot of small companies, so 95% of the business ecosystem are SMEs, also micro SMEs. So I think it's important to underline that in some destinations, most of the SMEs are micro SMEs, but then they are working together with a complexity of actors that are public and private entities, that are research institutes, but then we have the big operators, but then we have also technological companies, and then all together have to converge in this transversality of the tourism sector, in which they have to work together with entities that are working in the agri-food sector, in mobility, in skills, smart cities and communities, and so on. So that is clear, and that's why in the Deploy Tour, when we drafting the proposal, we had the SMEs as a focus. So it was very important to define the activities of the data space based on their needs and requirements. And for the implementation of the project, we are going to implement 5 use cases. One of them is totally focused on the empowerment of SMEs. And then the others are tackling other challenges in the tourism sector. We have also Jonathan here, that they are leading one of the pilots in the Ile-de-France area related to MICE tourism. And then that's interoperability. And interoperability, what we want in Deploy Tour, and we are only in the 8th month of implementation, it's defined by design. So what we don't want is to implement or deploy the European tourism data space, and after the 3 years, oh wow, we have to be interoperable, and we start making integrations to see how it's going to work. So we are working hard, very hard now. And also again, Eona-X with Jonathan knows it quite well. We are trying to understand which are the main challenges that we're going to have in terms of interoperability by demonstrating it, not just paper, but just to go a little bit further and to try to develop a cross-sector use case in which we can start identifying which are the challenges of interoperability. Now we will start with one sector, which is mobility, but of course we want also to check it with agriculture, Green Deal, smart cities and communities, cultural heritage, and so on.
Thanks, Dolores. Good to hear that it's those things you're addressing is a lot. For example, the empowering SMEs aligns nicely with what Rehana also brought up earlier, and we'll touch back on those different use cases later to see maybe what are the challenges or the different challenges that are arising there. But Jonathan, I want to turn to you first, because I want you to tell me a little bit about what Eona-X is briefly, just in case there's anyone in the audience who doesn't know, but also how do those different challenges we've mentioned, how does that reflect with your experience?
Sure. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and thanks for everything that has been said before. I couldn't agree more with all the different points of views. Eona-X is a hybrid ecosystem. I could just very briefly share a slide just to make it faster to understand. I hope you can see my screen. I'm just going to share it a little wider. We're a small ecosystem of 30 participants, but some are key players in the industry. We are a lighthouse project. We're working to become a lighthouse data space, which means integrating a clearinghouse. I'll tell you a bit more about that a little later. But our choice at the foundation of Eona-X was to bring together several interrelated sectors together, which is a different choice than what Catena-X, for instance, has done, which is a champion, of course, in size, but the relationship is more of a client and people already working together, which are structuring themselves around data sharing. Here, we're between verticals which are interdependent, mobility and tourism, of course. You can't travel if you don't go anywhere, but also trains, planes, they have passengers, but they also have cargo. So we really are trying to see how all this interrelates. We also have some tech providers which are helping to make it work, and we are trying to balance SMEs. We have 11 SMEs today and 14 large group and companies. But also research, I think it hasn't been mentioned, but I think we also need their help and vision as a scientific council, and to also have a bit more clarity, including on business models, things like that. And as you can see, we have mobility and tourism that are intertwined in this ecosystem with public actors and private actors. And we believe really the scope, especially for tourism, is Europe. We believe that because, well, France likes to say it's the first visited country in the world, and it's true in numbers. But for instance, we have Spain as well, which is also a champion in terms of revenue. And I think we also have lots of value all over Europe in diversity of landscapes and cultures and gastronomy. And if we really want to be champions and work as destinations and not just as verticals, we need to work together and unite. And so this will really help us as an industry, and working as an industry, be competitive, facing the US, facing Asia, which are tackling, so behind and very close by. So this is really our scope, and I hope it gives a little clearer idea on where we are. We were just created officially as an association in 2022, and we are an operational data space. We're not a European project with lots of use cases that are trying to be delivered this year.
Thanks, Jonathan. Well, we'll come back to you as well to dig a little bit more into the learnings that you can share maybe with the audience. But you mentioned destinations, so let's turn to Polona. You've been mentioned by different panelists as one of the key enablers, let's say, in the implementation of the tourism data space, in terms of your role as a local data aggregator and facilitator. So could you tell us a little bit more about in the capacity as Ljubljana Tourism, but also as one of the competence centers, what is the role, especially when it comes to data governance at the local level?
So thank you for inviting me, and thank you for all the speakers before me for quite insightful presentations. So basically, Ljubljana Tourism as a DMO and also other DMOs on the European level, we are basically an intermediary between stakeholders of the destination itself, and then different data providers and also other institutions on a national level and also European level. We are responsible for the collected data from stakeholders, gathering other data sources and analyzing them, and then also conducting research and also interpreting the data, and then all of this together to manage the destination based on the data. We are all trying to do that, to do that more or less successfully. And on the same level, we are also responsible for sharing all this data back with our stakeholders, which is quite challenging. So informing, sharing the data with them, educating them, sharing our knowledge, and also basically educating new data analysts, because I think that one of the key challenge in destination management organization that we actually lack people that have knowledge to do data analysis, that understand data, that are actually able to interpret data that are then used in our managing of the destination. So we are trying to do that. It's quite challenging role, I would say. I think that we are basically have to do this on a ground basis. I have experienced this in Ljubljana, that the best way to do that, of course, data spaces are important and are key nowadays, but still you have to be on the ground. So you have to have meetings, presentations, workshop, methodological workshop with our stakeholders. And this is actually a long-term, I would say, run. We are doing that, I would say, now in Ljubljana for quite some years. And now it's finally starting to show up because people are quite interested in our data. This is actually one of the most insightful and interesting part of our presentations that myself and my colleagues are doing for different stakeholders during the year. So yeah, but it's quite challenging, and in basically we're lacking people that will be able to do that even more. So yeah, maybe just to start up. And also maybe maybe I also would like to add that we're doing all of that I was mentioning. We actually basically promote the use of data, because I think that some people are still, I have to say, scared of data because they are scared of statistics. Maybe they think that they have to have a PhD in statistics just to basically have a basic understanding, but this is not true. Luckily, so we're doing all of that, trying to improve statistical literacy among our stakeholders, but I have to also mention in our DMOs itself, so trying to improve and get more knowledge to our colleagues in our DMOs as well.
Thanks, Polona. Yeah, I wanted to maybe continue on that. So you mentioned you've been working on several years, so you're maybe in some ways can be a lighthouse for other DMOs. So I was wondering, in those, when you're working with all those different actors in Ljubljana, what kind of data are you bringing together? I think you mentioned statistical data. So could you tell us a little bit more about what kind of data you're integrating there, and what are some learnings you have that you could maybe share from that process of aggregating?
So yeah, we divide our department of data and research to data part and to the research part. So in the research part, we are conducting on a yearly basis quite a lot of surveys. This year, we also did our first public tender for our service, because Ljubljana Tourism is, of course, part of the public systems. So we will be conducting four quite big research this year. And on the data side, we on a regularly analyzes I would say more than 20 data sources, but this is like that we actually really regularly analyze this. And of course, there are other data sources that we also check, and then we are trying to combine all of this together. I can also mention, because I was talking about challenging, that currently I'm the only data analyst in Ljubljana, so you have to know that. So, and then we are of course working with our stakeholders. For more than a decade, we have a system for 2 data sets that we are gathering daily. So this is like occupation rates in our accommodations establishments. So they are reporting data on a daily basis, and also data of the visit of our museums and galleries in Ljubljana and our Ljubljana region, because Ljubljana is not only responsible for the municipality of Ljubljana, but also for the 24 municipalities that are part of Ljubljana region. Yeah, we are gathering this data, but also, for example, last 2 years we did a survey among international visitors in our attraction in Ljubljana region. And after we conducted the survey, so of course the participant attraction get the report and everything, and they are access of our Power by E, because we are showing the data in more advanced way. But also me and my colleague, who is mainly responsible for the region, went basically in the field. So we had like a trip for 3 days, and we visit every attraction, and we then had a meeting with them. We talk about the results, and then we also talk about other data, that we are gathering in Ljubljana. And this is the way that you actually gather people interested in data, that they want to be involved. And nowadays, this is actually going this far. They actually are willing to participate in the future also with the funding of our data and research activities, because of course we are I would say medium DMO in Europe. We are actually funded for the research and data part quite a lot, so we don't have that low funding, but still, because we are smaller, and the prices for different data sets are the same for the larger and the smaller destination, and this is also one of the key challenges that DMOs are facing right now, but they are willing to participate. So I think that in the next steps, in the next years, will be that we are actually will be establishing some kind of partnerships with them, private, public, something like that, because if we will want to continue growth in our data ecosystem, and of course nowadays, this year we also establish our own small data space that we are working with the Arctur company. And also as Ljubljana, which is like we are the capital of Slovenia, we are quite intensively involved also in the establishment of the national data infrastructure. So, Slovenia, our National Tourist Board just 2 weeks ago launched a national information system. So basically a national data set. So we have gatherings. There is a destination data intelligence group. There are 8 destinations and 8 DMOs from Slovenia that are part of this. So we are sharing knowledge and in good practices, and we are trying to help each other, especially we as Ljubljana, because I think that we have the most experiences, are trying to also educate others at the destination. So yeah, it's very interesting, and a very interesting job, I would say. I'm a data analyst and researcher by heart, and so it's quite exciting time, I would say, but it's also quite challenging time, I also have to say. So, but I also would like to mention one of the key things when we are talking about data spaces, and it was already mentioned several times in this workshop, is trust. I think that this is very, very important, because I think that we are all scared of what will happen, with our data, because we are somehow protecting our data. And I think that this is the main thing that has to be tackled to actually regain the DMOs to be involved in different data spaces.
Thanks, Polona. Indeed, yeah, we need those mechanisms that we can ensure and verify trust. And very important to hear your on the ground experience. And we'll, yeah, your statement of saying that you're the only data analyst in Ljubljana was quite striking. And we'll come back to what are those maybe capacities, if we have time later, that are needed in order to continue scaling up. Let's zoom out again and come back to you, Dolores. So it has been already mentioned that the deploy tour is obviously building on the preparatory action, which also sketched out a governance framework, a data governance framework for the European tourism data space. So I'm wondering, with those use cases, those pilot projects that you're implementing right now, is the reality when you're implementing actually matching with the theory that was sketched out? Are there any differences that pop out? So could you share a little bit about that?
Yes, well, what we have done from the beginning is to try to make a good definition of the pilot. So the pilots will start to be implemented only from October. What we have done until now from the beginning of the project is to define exactly how the projects are going to be implemented. If within the pilot we have discovered different use cases, and this was the case, because at the end the complexity and it has no sense to start building the house from the very top. So we really want to start making things small but really clear and that works. And we have divided some of the pilots into different use cases. Then we have gone use case by use case and pilot by pilot, identifying which were the data sources that are going to be needed to implement the pilots and the use cases. And we have been working in the data product offerings. So it has taken quite a long time to start working. We have generated also a parallelism within the pilots implementation and the preparation of the pilots and the implementation of the technical infrastructure, architecture, and so on. So we are not working as isolated activities within the project, but we are generating a coherence. This generates more work, more meetings within the consortia, which we are a quite big consortia with more than 40 entities. But at the end of the day, this brings us more knowledge, more unification in terms of the work we want to implement. In terms of the governance, we have defined again the role book and the rule book. The rule book is going to be submitted to the Commission at the end of this month. It's a quite comprehensive document, quite long. I think it's more than 130 pages. It's going to be public. And it goes to the detail in the definition of the different actors that have to be involved in a data space. It is not stopped in this level of data provider, data consumer, service providers, but it goes more in deep in order to check how all the different actors that are working at the level of the pilots can be involved. And this is especially important because when we started defining the pilots, of course, we have some partners that are official partners in the proposal. This means that they receive funds, but we have other stakeholders that are needed to implement this pilot. And that's why we have started to implement and to check and to work with the different ecosystems that exist at the level of each pilot, generating workshops, informing them about the project, which will be the benefits of data sharing. As Polona has mentioned, not everybody has all the skills, and it's funny when you go and you explain, oh, this is a data space. Oh, wow, what is this? So you have to start sometimes from the very beginning because we are using this terminology, which is in this bubble. But sometimes when you go out, you have to explain, well, you have data and he has data, and you have to share this data because you are going to get a new benefit in terms of value, efficiency, more capacity to take decisions. So you really have to explain with specific examples on how they are going to benefit. And then, okay, which kind of data do you have? Oh, here I have personal data, or here I have confidential data. How can we share this? Wow, are you compliant with GDPR? Or are you compliant with all the agreements, contracts, and so on? Oh, wow, so how can we connect and share this data? So we really need to explain all the rules that have to be followed. So in terms of the roles of each entity, but at the same time, there are a lot of regulations that have to be fulfilled. And then what we want also is to help the small and medium-sized companies, especially the ones that they don't have all this knowledge, And we are also working in the generation of a kind of template of agreements. And this is something that will come later on and as one of the services that we want to offer to the pilots, in order that we generate a balanced negotiation between the different entities that are going to share data in an ecosystem. So I think it's very important to understand the value of sharing data, and at the same time that a data space is not something compulsory. So it's on voluntary basis. So if you need to share data, this is the tool to do so in a secure and trust framework. But if you don't need to share data, if you need only a bilateral agreement with entities that you already know, you don't need to go to that. So I think it's very important for us to explain the different layers and how the different actors can interact in the data space. Because Ulrich was mentioning, well, this has to include also tourists. Well, we see tourists will be benefit by the data space, by the decisions, by the efficiencies, by the services, by them. But we have to check at which level the end users and understood as the tourists are going to be able to interact within a data space. And because also this can generate even more complexity. So we are, I think, in a very good track because we have defined quite well the pilot. I think the previous experience of the coordination and support action have brought us a good knowledge on how to deal with the different actors. And now from September onwards, we will start with the real implementation.
Thanks, Dolores. So I see here inclusivity in action, and my main takeaway from that is that, yeah, we can develop these, we can call them complex schemas, let's say, but then we need to also translate them into digestible, understandable actions, such as this template contracts that you mentioned. So we're really thinking from the perspective also of those different actors listed. I think I saw a raised hand from one of the participants. Maybe it was an accidental one, but that is a good reminder that as we'll continue our discussion, but if you have any questions, please do pop them in the Q&A and we'll address them in the panel. And otherwise, you can also raise your hand in the React button. So while we wait for those questions to come in, Jonathan, let's dive a little bit deeper into Eona-X's operational experience. You've worked with data and taken value out of that in the ecosystem that you showed us in your slide earlier. So what's some lessons you can share us about effective data governance, especially maybe from the point of view of trust and collaboration? I think those are maybe two topics that came out quite a lot today.
Sure. Well, just to give a brief history, it seems a long time ago, but it's just been about 2-3 years. At first, we had founding members, 6-7 founding members, which are the major companies who created Eona-X. They were mostly the IT departments, and they knew each other. They would already discuss between each other, and they would do things together. And then came the Data Governance Act, and they heard about Gaia-X framework, etc. And they felt like there was something there. So I would call these founding members as innovators. They saw that they were convinced that there was something new that they needed to address, and they founded the association saying, let's do this. But if you look at that, they already trust each other. They already know each other. So trust is something that they want to implement because they know they will have to grow the ecosystem. But at first, it's not necessarily the strongest aspect. So for credentials and things like that, we started issuing credentials, but we know each other and we can work together. When we started working on our first use case, which was first we did a demonstration in 2003, which was really working and seeing how technically this all worked. And this was already a good experience because people started putting data products and seeing how all that actually worked. But we had the Paris airports, which came up with a challenge of making it work in real life circumstances, with something really with value, which was the Paris Olympic Games last year. then the ecosystem needed to grow, and we started incorporating actors actually who didn't necessarily know each other as much, or who, you know, kind of have business relationships, but their trust needed to be an issue because, well, we had the Ministry of Interior, we had to follow delegations in real time, Israeli delegations, American delegations, all with convoys. There are operational trust also, because if one actor didn't do the right thing, they could clog up the whole airport with 300,000 passengers every day. So there was a real issue about, you know, operational trust. So I would say levels of SLA, confidentiality, things like that starting to appear. However, we were still with a, you know, relatively limited number of players, but it worked also because the Olympic Games is a fantastic opportunity to innovate and to do things together, because there's an energy where everyone wants it to work. So I would say we were here more with early adopters. Now, what we're trying to do now, just in September, just after the Paris Olympics, we had proven that the data space can be operational and works in real life circumstances. In the fall last year, we had about 30 use cases come up, most of them very business oriented, sometimes linked to public services as well. We've not mentioned B2G use cases where data sharing most of the time is voluntary, on a voluntary basis, but we could imagine that one day there might be some data that you have to share in a data space, and we could also see how that would work. I just wanted to add that, but we have an early majority. Now the question in there is more, how can I trust that I can actually do business with this? And the real questions of the early majority, and in particular SMEs which have joined, is, okay, I believe you, you have this great 5G, 4G, whatever, you know, like Alberto was mentioning. Okay, great, I believe you. I don't really want to know all the way it works and you know, the connectors and stuff. I just want to see it work, and can it actually apply to my problem? And also, how much does it cost? And am I going to earn more money than actually I'm going to have? And will somebody take the value? Because there's also the notion of value. And we started seeing things that are quite encouraging, where people had a hard time of putting value on their data. Now, because of the trust framework that Gaia-X provides, we're seeing people exchange data for free, but where they both exchange valuable assets between each other, saying, I have this, you have that, let's exchange, and this is of the same value. So this is something that we're very happy to see coming up. But however, we really need more than just a connector. We really need more than what the promise of data spaces is, you know, on a theoretical basis. We need this interoperability to be demonstrated. It's not easy for now. We're on the front line. This is why also we're trying to implement this clearinghouse I mentioned before. It's not really something anyone is asking us to do at the moment of our members in our business cases. However, we see it, as Alberto was saying, maybe as an enabler to help compliance and interoperability between data spaces by speaking the same language. So this is kind of the hard part of being a lighthouse project, is that you have to really listen to the people who are actually giving you their insights, these early adopters, which are telling you what they need. We didn't mention, but we're also part of a project called Cyclops, which some of you, I think, in the audience are a part of too, with AnySolution leading, which is actually what happens before the data space and just after the data space, but interacting with that connector, working on pipelines of data, just trying to make sure SMEs, for instance, can leverage and get to the same level as big players. And so we really need to have this full vision of what they need, answer that, and actually after that they will be able to play together. And on the other hand, we also, as early as lighthouse projects, we need to shed the light on the next step and try and see how we can implement things that really will be their future needs. And we're working on AI. I won't be too long, but we think agent AI in particular will also be something that can help for collaboration in the future and bring this collaboration to a next level, in particular because we build everything with the Gaia-X framework, which is machine readable. And I think this can really scale the collaboration to another level, which might bring some more B2C use cases, which for the moment are quite absent.
Thanks a lot, Jonathan. Yeah, just a reminder, if anyone would like to pose any questions, otherwise I get to ask all the questions that I like. So you have only a couple of minutes left to submit them. So just a final reminder for that. But otherwise, Jonathan, I just want to continue with you briefly. You mentioned, right, you started with a club that knows each other more or less, but obviously you're envisaging to scale up. You said Europe is the goal, right? Not as you move beyond the national context. So looking towards the European tourism data space, is already some considerations for how you when it starts to properly connect together, right? So what are some of the considerations from a governance perspective that you need to already think in advance of?
Yeah, exactly. This is what we're trying to work on, and in parallel to working with all these business cases, we're also invested in two major common European data space projects, which is the Deploy EMDS project for mobility and the Deploy Tour project. In both, we're invested also in use cases, local pilots, but there's very simple questions, which are how does a participant in the data space like Eona-X be able to publish a data product in a catalog, but how will this data product find itself in these federated catalogs at a common European data space level? That's the first question. And the next question is, well, will common European data spaces be interoperable? And Eona-X is part of two common European data spaces. And does that mean that mobility data will be in both catalogs, or should it be that there's a governance there that decides that only tourism data is in the European tourism data space and mobility data in the other? And so this is really very pragmatic questions that we're trying to deal with. There's things linked to identity as well. If people start using different ways of asking for identity and credentials, where is the identity given? So we're really asking, I think, the right questions because we're on the field and we just really want to know the answer. I think the answers that will be fine, and I hope maybe with the support of the SSC, but I think also the different consortiums are working, to actually have this discussion. Is really how do we solve these questions so that the users of data spaces won't have to solve them for us. We really need to figure it out all together. The Commission, Gaia-X, the SSC, the consortiums, everyone that are the makers of data spaces, so that the standards are, something that we can rely on, because the users will want something that works, and we will need to have the answers ready for them so that they can just plug and put their data and it finds itself in the right places, and the governance mechanisms actually work for them, where they feel safe, they feel that they still have control, and at the same time we unlock the value of data that's so that it can flow, like Rehana was mentioning.
Thanks, Jonathan. From Gaia-X perspective, I'm happy to hear the question of identity pop up, because this is exactly somewhere where Gaia-X can help in standardizing how we identify with each other. So that this is an important question to address for the future.
I'll just add very quickly, in this, I think this is very new, the clearinghouses, and I think people also need to see how these clearinghouses can help that. And so we're exploring that at the moment. It's still very new. The clearinghouses themselves are not used to having clients, to be frank, and so they're also in something new for them. And so I think there's a dialogue there that needs to really work and get these mechanisms running. And of course, we're all learning as we're doing it. So I think it's great to have this collective way of learning. I think we just need to make it fast for it to actually be adopted.
Yeah, great. Dolores, one or more question for you. when looking ahead towards the future, say the deploy tour, I believe finishes in 2027. So what do you think, in short, what do you think will be the main challenge we'll be focusing on from a governance perspective then? Will we still be struggling with the same issues, or what is your optimistic view and maybe your pessimistic view?
I'm very positive. I'm very optimistic because well, you know that the new Digital Europe program has already been approved, the new world program, and the tourism data space is already included. So I think that's very good, and we have to be thankful to Rehana team, DigiConnect, because tourism will continue go on. So with the implementation of more use cases and increasing the community and to ensure that the deployment runs smoothly. Then we have other initiatives, and Polona is part of one of them, which is the Competence Center. The Competence Center for Data Management in Smart Destinations is now helping the destinations to better management data, to work with sustainable tourism indicators, generating a kind of community with 40 DMOs that have been selected. And then, but the natural path is also to help them to understand why data spaces are interesting also for them to share this data. And now, at the end of this year, it will start a new project. This new project, it's called Facilitate, and it's addressed to help destinations and SMEs, but the general tourism ecosystem on how to better manage data spaces and the competence center. It's based on skills. So, and I think this is very important. So it's to generate the skills, it's to generate knowledge, it's to generate courses, training, capacity buildings, because, I don't think everybody needs to know how a connector works. You just want to use it. So, and if we are able to do it plug and play, and we can explain to the DMOs or the companies, okay, you want to share data, okay, those are the tools, those are the conditions, those are the, and they just have to, it's like a browser. So you have internet, you have several browsers, this is the best for you, and this is the other. And we really want that this would be a way in which a data space is going to work in tourism, but also in other sectors, because at the end, as mentioned, tourism is very transversal. So we are quite convinced, because we are working with the DMOs, we are listening to the DMOs, and we are learning from their needs and requirements. We are learning also from the needs and requirements of the SMEs, but not only, because now we are having meetings with big tourism operators, the hotel chains, airline companies, airports, and so on. And we really want to understand which are the challenges or which are the barriers that they can have for sharing data. And I think that with all these projects that the European Commission is launching, also we have the support of the European Parliament to generate these possibilities, to generate this knowledge, to spread this knowledge, to generate capacity building, to train the people, and not only at general level in English, which always generate barriers, but in Facilitate, we have to use local languages. We have to go to the ground to check which are the needs. And I think this is the important thing, to be able to generate a great community in which everybody is informed, and at different levels, everybody will be able to use a data space.
It's a great closing statement, Dolores, but Polona, I would like to give the final word to you. Is there anything that you could add there, especially coming from the more local perspective, or has Dolores sufficiently covered everything there?
No, I can continue from Dolores, but yeah, I think that I have to comment on the Competence Centers project, because I think it's really great from this perspective that we are sharing knowledge. And it actually doesn't matter what kind of knowledge already you have. So are you advanced or you just have basic skills? You are actually able to learn something new. I think that this is the key, at least for the DMOs in the future. So I really appreciate that we are part of it. But also, I also have to add that there are not just 40 DMOs that are included, because, for example, Ljubljana, we are sharing this knowledge with other DMOs in Slovenia. So I think that also much more DMOs are actually included. And I think that this is the key, that we have the skills, that we know how to use the data. I think maybe when you are thinking of development data spaces, you can also think maybe to make some instruction videos, tutorials, how to use the data. because yeah, if you just the data spaces, if there is existing and nobody is using it in the future, or nobody is using the data, you know, it's actually a lack of time to develop it. So yeah, so this would be my final words. Yes, basically.
Thanks, Polona. Yeah, I think we can summarize, if we could summarize it in a very short sentence. I feel like as we move from theory to implementation with data governance, it's really about making things simple. So this inclusivity element that we need to address. So as we come to a close, I'll try wrap everything up in 1 minute. I just want to share my screen also, that the conversation does continue. So we have the Gaia-X tourism ecosystem, which has regular meetings bi-monthly, which are led by our lead, Dolores. So yeah, the goal here is really to keep these topics alive and collaborate together with other stakeholders in the ecosystem. The next meeting is on the 9th of July at 1 p.m. We will also share the link to that meeting in the follow-up communication. So please do join if you're not part of that community yet. If you're a Gaia-X member, you can actually already access all this information in the members platform. And if you're not a Gaia-X member, you can always just reach out to me directly. And then as we are in a Gaia-X event, I just have a final save the date for our summit in Porto in Portugal, which will take place on the 20th and 21st of November. But with that, I will conclude the webinar. So thanks a lot to all of the speakers for your insightful discussion. And we hope to see you all then in the next tourism ecosystem meeting. Thanks a lot and have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.